Now we are starting. Dear colleagues, I'm happy to introduce Melvin Hall, an expert in rhetoric and composition with a doctoral degree, which is especially important for Russia, where we have very few experts in the field. So I hope you enjoy his presentation. And Melvin, welcome.
All right, thank you. Let me share my screen one more time. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So first I want to thank Irina for the opportunity to present to you all today, and very thankful. And I'm excited to engage with you. So it's my first all Russian audience. I'm assuming you're all Russian. So yeah. So, and as I was, my initial thought was, when I was preparing this, is that the focus would be all on, submitting an article to a journal and specifically writing the cover letter that accompanies that. And because I think rhetorically, I was thinking about the situation we were, that the genre of the cover letter responds to. And the situation is, as I was researching it, is changing. And that's largely changing because things are going more and more digital. And the cover letter, so the genre is changing because it's responding to a different situation. So it's evolving from a cover letter to an online submission form. So what I was originally going to present was just the cover letter. And then I felt that it was would be leaving something out, wouldn't be correctly responding to the situation of submitting an article. So I added that part to it. So that's what we're looking at. And I did some research in some of the journals that you have that are here: the American Economic Review, the Journal of Political Economy, College Composition and Communication, which is from my field, the Quarterly Journal of Economics, and Social Media and Society, just to get a snapshot of what the submission requirements are and what they require with a cover letter. So, and the quotation from Ecclesiastes is actually my sense of humor. So yeah, so I used to think about this when I was studying a lot. So yeah, but anyway, the second slide is a summary of this rhetorical situation that we have for the cover letter. So our recurring social situation as scholars is submitting an article to a journal for review. And it's a persuasive act, right, to get the attention of the editors and the reviewers. And our typified response is a cover letter, which is evolving into a submission form to fit the digital age. Yep. So, and so our agenda today is, first off, to understand the situation. Where do we go to look for what are the instructions for authors? So locating submission requirements, it's fairly easy. And then look at whether or not these journals require a submission form, online submission form, or a cover letter. And then the next part of the presentation will show an example of a cover letter and its parts, both its form and its content. And then it'll show how the online submission form is actually taking the place of the cover letter. But some of the content is where the content of the cover letter is now being housed in the submission form. And the hedgehog, I thought, was a good metaphor for describing what it's like just to be a writer in general, but and discover muddling your way through, but also the publication process can be quite, we can be in a fog in a sense, but we can also find our way out with hedgehog. So with that, we'll take a look at IFAs, instructions for authors, where you can find. So usually, for example, a journal. Oh, and please, if you have a question during the the presentation, please interrupt. Yep, so that would be great. Okay, so locating instructions for authors, submission guidelines, that's what we're looking for. So for example, the webpage for the Social Media and Society has, you can find it on the tab here. And let's see, you can also, just one moment. Yep. So I have to move this. I think you can see the screen now. So if you click on that, it'll give you a list of guidelines. Can everyone see those guidelines?
Yes.
Yes. So these guidelines are quite extensive. So, and like the editorial policies, the peer review policy. So once you click on that, it'll give you pretty transparent instructions about how the policy for each journal will go and work. And the key for whether or not you submit a cover letter or complete an online form, and how you do both, would be under the submitting your manuscript. And usually every journal has detailed instructions about how to do that. Okay, so, and I'll take a look at those a little bit later, some of those instructions. And it's the same with the, for example, the American Economic Review. They have a list of instructions. So you would just find the submission guidelines, and what you find there, for example, in the American Economic Review, is in general, we do not require a cover letter. So most of the information that used to be in the cover letter for the American Economic Review, and actually the Quarterly Journal of Economics and the Journal of Political Economy, is now in knowledge domains within the online submission form. For example, and show you that in a second. So it's the same with, as I said, the QJE does not require authors to submit a cover letter, although they can if they want. So, you know, it is like hedgehog in the fog in a way, because some of it is very ambiguous. Some of the journals say outright, we do not want you to submit a cover letter. We just want you to submit the online form. Some of the journals say, well, you have an option. And some of those journals still say, well, we require you to submit a cover letter. So, for example, here, Social Media and Society, I'm not sure if you can see it, in their online form, they actually have a place for you to upload your cover letter. It's optional, but they give you that option. So that's, so the first thing we would have to do when you're submitting your article to the journal is read the instructions for authors, right? So that you understand exactly what they want. And so the cover letter itself, so if a cover letter is required, usually they're short, no more than 4 paragraphs, usually 3. So, and this is an example model from Taylor and Francis, the publisher Taylor and Francis, which publishes many academic journals. And some of the other forms, other journals, I was looking at examples, usually follow this form. So you make your formal request to the journal in 1 paragraph and you address the editor. The second paragraph states the originality and uniqueness of your research, whether it's the question, data, analysis, or findings. And then the third paragraph is more, acknowledges kind of the ethical part of the research, like conflicts of interest, where funding came from. And I know in the economics side of things, in the economic journals, they request that there's public access to your data, for example. What I found interesting was the Journal of Political Economy. One of the requirements is that all of the authors have tenure. I had never seen that before, but I thought that makes that journal very exclusive. It's not just the principal author that has tenure. All of the authors have to have tenure in order to be considered. So that, I just thought I would share that as I thought it was interesting for that. So, for example, the first paragraph of the cover letter, so you would give the article title, the article length, the number of words, and the name of the targeted journal. So you can see it's very short. And I recommend not starting with the personal pronoun I. Just please accept the accompanying article. Literacy, this is just an example that I wrote. Literacy practices of the 2030 generation in Saudi Arabia. And it's 3,000 words for consideration and review by the International Journal of Literacy. So you can see it's short and sweet, right? In opening that up or addressing the editor, right? So it's those basic 3 items: the article title, the length, and the name of the targeted journal. Now, this is the substance. The second paragraph would be the substance. You could divide this into 2 paragraphs, make it 2, and as the cover letter, so paragraph number 2 is where you state the uniqueness of your research that's being presented in the article manuscript. So you have so you basically present any gaps in knowledge, unique research location, and data sets or frames. So what makes your research publishable? I also think about this as, and learned this at University of Wisconsin-Madison, the researchers there were always saying you have to situate yourself in the field. So you're always, so this paragraph is a good place to show how your research is oriented with the other research being published in the field and how it builds on that research. So you can state significant findings too, if the methodology is new or the results are very interesting. So basically here is your being persuasive, showing those unique characteristics of the research. For example, the research discussed in the manuscript is unique in a variety of ways and fills several gaps in literacy research. So this would be based on some research that I'm doing here in Saudi Arabia, for example. So I would promote this. So I would point out the article answers what the research question is, right? The article answers the question, what are the evolving literacy practices among young Saudi college-age students? And it takes a unique ethnographic qualitative approach, interviewing 50 women and men about their literacy practices, as well as making field observations. And here's what makes it unique. To date, there is no substantive study of contemporary literacy practices in Saudi Arabia. So the study sheds light on a unique location and provides a very unique data set regarding young Saudis using digital technology and literacy, right? And then one sentence about the methodology is unique in that it moves beyond the standard ideological model of literacy propounded by G and Street. So here it situates, so it tells people where in the field the research can be placed, who it's building on, or who in the field is responding to. Then it just outlines very briefly what the new model is that's replacing G and Street. Instead, we apply a Burkean model of literacy that we name constitutive rhetoric. So the research provides a unique sample frame, young Saudis, new theoretical approach to literacy research, and shows how the definition of literacy is changing with the advances of digital technology in Saudi Arabia. And so it fills this second paragraph fills these 3 criteria that generally highlight the article, right? Why is it important? What gap in knowledge does it fill in the research? And state significant findings and why it's appropriate for that particular journal. Yeah. Is that good so far? I'm checking in with my audience. Yeah. So I'm feeding off of your energy. So paragraph 3 then is also short. It would be short. There are no conflict, and it's more of the ethical side, deals with the ethical side of publishing the research. So there are no conflicts of interest, as the research received no funding. So I know that in all of the economics journals, and I think this is true across the board, you have to acknowledge where your funding is from, right? So you can imagine the pharmaceutical companies today, right? Rushing to get the COVID vaccine when they publish, right? They have to acknowledge where they're getting their funding and their conflicts of interest. With that, and what's also very important here is that you also, the writer or the authors have to acknowledge that the article is not under consideration with any other journal and is not published elsewhere. So, and then if you're using human subjects, you also have to have a short statement stating that it had institutional review board approval, at least in the United States, right? IRB, institutional review board approval, once you're doing international research, starts to become more complicated how that works. So is essentially how that would look. And there is an outline I can send. This outline of the cover letter actually comes from Taylor and Francis. I think you can see it. Yep. So, and I followed that outline. So you can see it's very short. Theirs is even shorter. Their second paragraph is shorter than mine. So, in that, and of course it's going to vary based on the research. But what I've seen is that all of the cover letters I researched follow this model. It's basically 3 to 4 short paragraphs. Okay. Now, what has happened? How has it evolved? So, well, now, so that what I just went over, the cover letter is becoming an extinct species, so to speak. It's evolving into the online submission form. And the first 3 items in red on the online submission form are what are taking place of the cover letter. So the titles start to become very important and persuasive, a persuasive text in and of itself, kind of announcing where the article fits in the field. And then you have an abstract, which is a brief summary, right, of the major points in what the research is, what the research is being presented in the article. And then you have key terms and concepts, 5 to 7. So what does that, and that these 3 things are usually submitted either in a domain on its own within the submission form, or it's the abstract and the keywords are presented just above the beginning of the article in the manuscript. I'll give you an example of that. And so what does this look like then? So I'm not sure. So you can see this is for the Journal of Political Economy, and so you can see that now they just have these simple domains instead of the letter. Has the paper being submitted ever been published, or is it under consideration elsewhere? So you would, say state no, right? So. And it's not being considered elsewhere. And then please state that you have been aware of the journal's data availability process. And I noticed in medical journals and the economic journals, this is quite important because the reviewers get to review the raw data and see how the authors arrived at their conclusions. And then, and then it says, please state that you have read the instructions for authors. So you can see that the submission forms, and this is true, I think I can show you a better example of the submission form. just a second here. Yeah. So you can see in the social media and society, the first three items are the title and the abstract, and then on the next page, or then the third, the attributes are the key words. And what does that look like? Let me show you. So in an article that I submitted, for example, for publication, so then the title becomes important. You would put the title in. So in this case, it was Literary and Rhetorical Technology, Individualized Project-Based Digital Expressions of Saudi Students. Now, the abstract takes the place of paragraph 2 of the cover letter. So it basically writes the summary and tells you what the research is about and why it's important, right? Why it's unique and what knowledge gaps it fills. So, and then the key words. And these are important because when people are Googling the research, certain topics, or it's being placed for publication in databases, this is what will get hits with your for your article when people search for it, right? The keywords. So in this case, in this article, it was Don Idy, post-phenomenology, multi-stability, Michael Polanyi. You would develop these keywords based obviously on the conceptual foundations of your article and your research, but also, again, it's situating the article in the field, what you think people would be most interested in your article for. So that's, and I can show you. So the online submission form was pretty straightforward. Now you have these knowledge domains, right? And it's not done in the form of a cover letter anymore. So you would have the title, the abstract, then you would upload your manuscript in part 2, and then in part 3, it gives you a very simple place to write your keywords, right? And then the authors and institutions. So then you write your author and institutional information for all authors, and the corresponding author, you need to designate who the principal author is. And then all those ethical questions are also taken care of in the submission form. But you'll see here that a cover letter is not a required field, but they give you an option to submit a cover letter as well, okay? In this case, some of the academic economics journals are very adamant, no cover letter, right? So that's it. And then, yeah, and here you see that the confirmation that the journal, that your article is only being submitted for consideration at this journal, right? And so those ethical questions are also taken care of there. Now, let's see. Any questions so far? No. So the summary. So here we have the summary then. So the cover letter has these 3 parts. You greet the editor, and it just basically is submitting your art, saying, hey, take a look at my article, please. Right? And then the uniqueness of the research, gaps of knowledge, and then acknowledgements, the ethical requirements of the research, where the funding comes from, the conflicts of interest, data publicly available, and IRB approval. But you'll notice that the substance now, paragraph 2 of the cover letter, is now taken care of with the article title, the abstract, and the key terms in the online submission form, right? And then paragraph 3 is taken care of and is now you provide that information in other knowledge domains and drop down windows in the form, online submission form. And writing an abstract is an art in itself, right? It's not part of today's discussion. I think I've finished. That's it. If you have any questions.
Okay, Melvin, thank you very much. Colleagues, any questions? I'll switch on to,
No questions. Everything was clear, and now we all are ready to submit our articles, I think.
Actually, I have to apologize because this narrow field for discussion was narrowed by me. Just it occurred to me that maybe I can ask Melvin to recommend how to write cover letters, although I myself didn't write cover letters for quite a long period of time. I know that there are submission forms of other types, and he meticulously followed what I asked. Actually, I believe you might have other questions than immediately connected to the presentation, because Melvin is planning to come to Russia and maybe join us here and teach. Right, Melvin? Am I right?
Yes. That's the idea. That's the goal.
So
Yep.
maybe some pedagogical questions, because he teaches in a very specific environment.
Yep. Yep. So right now I'm in Saudi Arabia, and all of our courses, I think this is true everywhere, are digital and online. And of course, all of my students are men. Yeah.
Hello, excuse me. I've got a question.
Yes.
If you allow me. We have recently submitted an article for a publication, and the article has been written as a report on some research conducted in terms of a grant program. And the journal that has accepted the article for the publication, in fact, asked us not to mention that this has been a part of a research of a grant program. Like, this research has been conducted within this grant, let's say grant research. So why would that be? Have you got any ideas? Like, because we are supposed to publish our results in journals to report on what we have done, but the journal suggested that we do not indicate like who sponsored that research. Why would that be? Why could that be an issue? Thank you.
I don't know. It seems like I'm teaching a course right now on writing research proposals and conducting research, and I was just reviewing the ethics of research, and that seems the opposite of what would be, from my knowledge. It's like that it's required that the funding, like where you get your support, is so that it's transparent. So I don't know why the journal would do that. First, I couldn't answer that. I would ask.
This is not the usual way of doing things, right?
No, in fact, no. No, and one reason I can give you a practical example of why. For example, the research done on whether or not sugar causes obesity. Okay, so it's important then. A medical researcher did a literature review, and his question was, well, who is sponsoring all of this research? Right? Where's the funding come from? And why are the conclusions essentially that no, sugar does not cause obesity and therefore is not a principal cause of diabetes? Okay. So so after he goes through and he reads all of where the funding comes from, of course, then there's a strong correlation between the soft drink industry, funding of the research that shows that sugar doesn't cause obesity. Yeah. And so I think I couldn't say why the journal would ask you not to be transparent about where the funding is coming from.
I probably can guess, because the funding comes from our country and the publication is supposed to be in the European Union there. So probably some political moments. I don't know.
Oh, well, yes. Okay, so, all right. That makes sense. Yeah, you would know. That's something that I actually hadn't well, that's, I was curious about that. Okay, yeah, I can see that. The politics involved, international politics. Yep.
Thank you for answering.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But in general, that would not be the case, right? Well, for example, in the Lancet, I can't remember the name of the lab in Russia that developed the COVID vaccine, Sputnik V. But when they published in Lancet, you will see that they actually had to acknowledge where their funding came from. Yep.
So far as I know, medical journals are very specific in that. First of all, very rarely do they have one author, because a whole laboratory labors over it. And generally, they do not fund themselves. It's not just sitting somewhere in the study theoretically. They carry out research within a huge institution, right?
Yes.
Therefore, how can you present research in medical science or biology, nuclear physics, without any funding, right?
Yeah.
It's not the 18th century anymore, right?
Yeah.
Colleagues, any more questions? Or we can thank Melvin for now. I will stop the video and you might ask him some other questions. So we're saying goodbye to video viewers and